Mansfield.
Future sports have to be violent. I know this because I was raised on a diet of Speedball, which was both set in the future, was a sport, and Rogue Third Element, even though I did just say both, was violent. I took those games as a documentary, you see, and I wait patiently for the world's first actual Speedball league to form. If those twerps get to play real-world Quidditch, I should get my real-world Speedball. It's only fair. But what is Speedball? Why do I actually care about it? And whatever happened to it? Let's look back through the viewing sphere, or Google it, whichever is quicker and lends itself best to writing a script. The Bitmap brothers launched this monstrosity in the late 80s. Speedball, a mix of rugby, handball, football, science fiction, and metal. It saw two teams of 5 facing off against one another in a simple contest to score the most points by getting a metal ball into the opposition's goal. Simple and straightforward. Layered on top of this premise though was 2 key elements. Power-ups with different impacts and modifiers on the game's action, and the pursuit of extreme violence. No red cards in Speedball, you see. Not even any yellow cards, not a card in sight. Just punches. Punch cards. I should turn that into a joke. Note to self, turn punch cards bit into a funny joke. Side note, do not forget to do this. Rugby and metal outfits with an emphasis on battering each other wouldn't really be of interest by itself with the actual thing you play lacking, but Speedball lived up to its promise. It was indeed riddled with balls and definitely speedy, a simpler game from a simpler time, sure, but it brought up something urgent and primal in us, a need to hit each other and throw our balls around in a definite non-metaphor situation. You had the on-pitch elements like a tunnel transferring the ball from one side to the other, and the bouncy things that changed the ball's direction. You had off-pitch stuff like players who could be upgraded and various bribes that could be handed out to try and give yourself a fighting chance, something I desperately needed while playing to capture this footage because my skills on the original game have not held up over 35 years. Speedball was good. A good game. Arcadey, sporty fun with a neat twist playing off the likes of cult movie Rollerball. It was well received and it still has plenty of fans to this day. And it was a superb starting point for what would become an Amiga legend, and a bit of a gaming phenomenon in the early 90s. Well, on the Amiga at least, and only really in Europe, but still a phenomenon. This is where the bulk of the video is, as a bit of a spoiler. See, in short, Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe is one of the best sequels ever made. There was a story behind it. The original Speedball League had been shut down owing to rampant corruption, a nice nod to the bribery mechanics of the original. Sometime later, a rebirth of Speedball occurred, coinciding with the birth of a new team, Brutal Deluxe. This was you, your team. A useless bunch of idiots, basically. You would take Brutal Deluxe and enter leagues and knockout competitions, turning them from inexperienced newbies to grizzled veterans of this resurgent sport. And you'd do it all in a game that saw countless upgrades to its original formula. Graphically, things looked phenomenal, applying the by-then trademark Bitmap Brothers style, metallic greys and grey blues, chunky little sprites with expressive animation and impactful sample-riddled sound effects. You can still feel the impact of a punch and sing-song along with the hawker selling his ice cream during the few bits of downtime in a match. Presentationally, there were no sports titles that could touch Speedball 2 back in the day. It was absolutely its own thing, and all the better for it. Helpfully, the game bits saw upgrades and improvements along similar lines. The bribery system had gone bye-bye, justified as it was through the sequel's limited storyline, but so very much else was added. More power-ups on the now significantly bigger pitch, the ability to add score multipliers for your team and to remove them from your opponents if they'd activated them before you were able to. A bzz thing that caused the ball to electrify and shock opposition players, but that could be stolen off you with a well-timed tackle. Injuries and substitutions, bouncy things on the pitch that added to your score. So much clanking. It was an intelligent, pacey game, high on simplicity, but riddled with enough going on under the hood that you could safely describe it as having a bit of strategy to things. Sure, playing against the AI wasn't an exercise in facing off against omnipotent demigods. CPU teams were absolutely beatable with some pretty straightforward, sometimes literally, techniques, but it was still a lot of fun. And playing against other humans, That's where Speedball 2 became legend. A competitive masterclass in hyper-violent future sports where the cry of ice cream became synonymous with success or failure, playing as it did during the replay of a goal just scored, or while a player was being carted off the pitch by the medical robots after a few too much fisting to the face. All of this newness did come with a downgrade to the arenas. No longer did different teams have different pitches, every match took place along the same basic setup. Not a deal breaker by any means, but a definite downgrade alongside a massive list of upgrades. It's fair to point it out. Regardless, Speedball 2 was a resounding, immediate success. The love for the sequel rippled through the years following its release, and while it never really hit the same heights outside of the Amiga, on Commodore's machine the travails of Brutal Deluxe were keenly followed for years. The game easily made its way onto plenty of best ever game lists, including my own. You see Speedball 2 with modern eyes though, and you're right to wonder why and how it made those lists. The game appears simultaneously chaotic and dumb, a morass of grey-blue characters sliding around the screen at high speed as a ball seemingly with a mind of its own floats about from here to there. It doesn't look like there's much intent behind anything. It doesn't look like there's much control to be had. It doesn't look like much fun. But just like... Wait, what's a modern reference? Rocket League? That actually works pretty well. Just like Rocket League, what seems simplistic and dumb at a glance reveals itself to be more complex, skillful, and importantly fun when you get to actually waggling the joystick. Now, I'm not saying Speedball 2 is the same as Rocket League, the latter is a far more complex game, what with it being all modern and that, but at a fundamental level I think it's a decent comparison. One end to the other, fast-paced play, goals usually plentiful, shining in multiplayer, straightforward controls. It's that intangible, that wanky phrase. It's the game feel. Speedball 2 was a simple game to play. It was designed for machines with an 8-direction joystick and one input button after all, but it weaved such a rich tapestry around that basic input to make something so much deeper, so much more engaging. On top of the in-match stuff, Speedball 2 also ramped up the out-of-match stuff. Your players were now a rogues gallery of futuristic ne'er-do-wells. Your starting lineup, including goalkeeper Barry, may have been a fresh-faced bunch of dweebs, but soon enough you would either be transferring in new players to take over, each a beautifully designed cyberpunk sportsperson with a distinct rugged charm, and a playstyle you could recognise on the pitch even if you couldn't see the faces, or those of us, the heroes among us who didn't want to rely on bringing in ringers, could instead opt for the other choice, sending Barry and co. to the gym. The sense of progression when playing Speedball 2 this way was palpable. Your team at the beginning was easily the worst in the league. Yes, you could still win with enough grit, gusto and knowing your way around the AI's limitations, but keeping them as they started, you would eventually get the shit kicked out of you. After you've been promoted to the top league of teams basically. But picking up coins on the pitch during matches and funneling that cash into the development of your players resulted in them getting better, and eventually becoming genuine world beaters. You started as garbage but could, if you stuck with it, end up with battle-hardened Barry leading from the back as you battered Super Nashwan, which 7-year-old me would be delighted to hear I did twice while capturing for this video. You are nothing, Nashwan. Or you could just stick with signing those players from the transfer market because the character portraits were cool and their abilities could go a bit higher than those of your default team, I don't know. Speedball 2, I'm going to repeat it, Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe is one of the best sequels ever made. I could go into the 14 million ports here, but I think the Strike series video taught me a good lesson. Save that for another day if you can be bothered. Safe to say Speedball 2 came out on 10 or so formats in the early 90s, and you're likely seeing one or two of them right now as I say these words. Nothing was ever quite as good as the Amiga original, mind you, which is just how it always should be. Though now I am wondering if it was one of those games made for the Atari ST first and ported to the Amiga, as so many were in this period. Alright, I've looked and both ST and Amiga versions were made at the same time, and while it looks like maybe the intent was to just port things across like they did with the first game, the devs on Speedball 2 actually took much fuller advantage of the Amiga to make the game, resulting in a version that just couldn't be done the same on the ST. So the Amiga game is officially better, and the argument about which machine is superior can finally be laid to rest forever. Phew, thanks me. The Speedball series, though, certainly wasn't laid to rest forever. It developed into a series of releases that, well, Releases that I'm not going to spend quite as much time talking about as the original Speedball 2, which should tell you a lot. The first follow-up to Speedball 2 actually tried to be an honest to Hades sequel in name and all. An upgrade for the PlayStation generation, bringing together the greatness of the Amiga game and the gritty 3D-tastic visuals of Sony's world-conquering console. And it was a dud. Maybe had it arrived a few years earlier, Speedball 2100 would have carried more weight, but this was Space Year 2000, the PlayStation's twilight years, and the game just couldn't carry the weight of expectations. It was clunky and slow-paced, and a loss of the simplistic fun of the second game led to something that, while an honest effort to continue the series, just wasn't very good. And the computer somehow cheated even more than it did in the previous game, which was quite the achievement. In the early-ish days of Xbox Live Arcade, Speedball 2 was added to the 360's digital roster with much fanfare, at least from the few of us Amiga stalwarts still doing the rounds. While largely a faithful remaster of the Amiga game, the XBLA version did indeed make a then-modern, much-hyped addition to the formula, a 3D graphics mode. Let's see how that oh my god, my eyes, please someone scoop them out and set fire to them! A mixed bag then. On one hand, it was exactly the same, more or less, as the original sequel. On the other hand, it was exactly the same, more or less, as the original sequel, meaning nothing had been particularly improved upon. On the rogue third hand, it featured a genuinely rather disgusting 3D makeover that somehow managed to look worse than Speedball 2100 itself, not a very pretty game. Still, the fires burned and the peeps, they wanted more. That more arrived with Tournament, releasing in 2007 on PC after an extended period of rumour and gossip and... Look, I didn't even know this game had actually released until I started doing research for this video. I remember reading about it and getting hype, but also thinking it'd never be a thing and so drifting off elsewhere with my attention. Turns out Kiloton, the studio mainly behind the WRC games these days, did end up finishing and releasing Speedball 2 Tournament, and if I'd paid attention back then, well, I'd have known for over 15 years that Kiloton didn't really finish the game, and that Tournament was received rather poorly when it hit the market all those years ago. A buggy game that just wasn't very much fun at all. While it acted as a direct sequel to Speedball 2, it was a sad direction for the series to head in. And it's telling that, as of right now in January 2023, there have been no further efforts to do Speedball again, but in 3D. What happened instead of the 3D revolution was a reversion to type. With the popularity of mobile gaming on the up around the late noughties, it wasn't very surprising to see another take on the original 2D Speedball 2 pop up on iPhones and iPads. Rather than a straight-up do-over of the second game like an Xbox Live Arcade though, Speedball 2 Evolution aimed to, evolve proceedings by... looking a bit different. The greys and blue-greys of the original art style was switched out for a softer, slightly more colourful palette, animations were redone, the pitch redrawn, a shout for hot dogs added in on top of the ice cream call-out, and I don't know what else, not much. And it wasn't great, to be honest. It later released on PSP and PS3 via Sony's Minis program, which is where I played it the most, and where I found it to be a slow-paced, piss-easy tribute to the original sequel rather than something bringing its own magic to the fore. It wasn't even something bringing the original's magic to the fore, just thoroughly pedestrian and a sure sign that the Speedball train had clearly derailed some time ago. We, the passengers, just weren't quite aware of it yet. Which brings us to, at the time of making this video, the final Speedball game. Yep, another do-over of Speedball 2, though at least this one is still up for sale on Steam so you can actually play it with ease. Problem is, it was simply a refinement of Evolution from a few years prior. Bigger screen, higher resolution, but largely the same game as on iPhone, PSP and co. As such, it retained the issues of that release, a lack of speed and the next to zero challenge, basically. Christ, you didn't even get to change which direction you were playing at half time. So sloppy, so easy, so lacking in urgency. It is, at the time I'm saying these words, a sad way for the Speedball series to sputter out. Not with a bang, not really with a whimper, more just with a chesty cough and a slouch into irrelevance. Did it have to be like this? No. Does it have to stay like this? No. I think we're in the right time for a proper Speedball rebirth. Online play, quick and dirty, simpler mechanics, buying skins for whatever it is you're walloping the ball around the field with. I'm just talking about Rocket League again. So make Speedball like Rocket League but with violent future sports and we'll be sorted. Yeah? Yeah. I was going to ask the Bitmap Brothers, or Rebellion, which owns the Bitmap's back catalogue, for input into this, then, well, didn't. But hopefully they'll see this and make it happen. Speaking of making it happen, it's my lovely darling patrons on Patreon who fill me with a light. I don't know how to end that sentence. Here they are. And a big, everlasting thanks to outgoing long-term supporter Takari Hoshi. Mad props and that, yo. I'm off to stand next to my Speedball poster and take a photo of me with it so I can put it in this video now. Bye!